All right, let's get started. Hey, everybody, I miss you guys so much. My name is Ron Harris, and thank you so much for joining me this evening. I actually don't know what the rules are for a town hall. I just wanted to get the opportunity to talk to you live, introduce myself to those who I haven't had the opportunity to meet. Let's talk a little bit politics right now, and then answer some questions that were sent in from earlier. So, like I said, my name is Ron Harris. I'll start with how I got involved in politics. I think that's a really good place to start. I didn't grow up in a really political family, but I grew up in a family that certainly faced some hardships. And growing up, I was able to recognize that a lot of the hardships that we faced were directly connected to policies and elected officials making those policies. A couple years back, I was really deeply involved in a paid sick time campaign in Minneapolis, where we were able to pass a law that mandated universal paid sick time to every worker in Minneapolis. And one of the ways I was able to participate in that was because of my own personal story. My mom, when I was first born, I had gotten pneumonia within a couple of months of being alive. And she had to take off of work to take care of me. And nobody else could take care of me. And she had to take off work, and she didn't have the kind of protections at her job that would allow for her to get paid while she took care of me at home. And so she had to go back to work. I actually had to be watched by a babysitter sooner than I was supposed to, and ended up getting pneumonia again. At that time, her boss essentially was like, "Look, if you take off work again, you're going to lose your job." And she was forced to make a tough choice between, go leaving me with somebody so she could go and pay the bills and pay for medicine and all that stuff, or take off work so she can take care of me. And she made the hard choice and lost her job. So I think that experience, along with many others, right, growing up African American in this country and other ways, really helped shape who I am as a person and what I believe in terms of politics, and started to really see elected officials and really see policy making as an opportunity to improve people's lives, right, or get in the way of people living their best life. I've always been somebody who's been a bit of an advocate, whether I was in elementary school, advocating for other students in the classroom, helping to tutor, helping to do things like that. I remember being in middle school, really small example, kind of silly actually, but organizing to raise money to get better basketball uniforms because we didn't think that the uniforms are good enough for us, right? We didn't want the old uniforms. We came together to do that. To getting into college and organizing that way. My first organizing opportunity actually was my freshman year in college. This would have been 2008. And I went to Hampton University my freshman year, which is a historically black college and university. And that year, of course, Barack Obama was on the ballot and had just wrapped up the Democratic nomination for president. And I remember being super fired up by this guy. I remember seeing him speak. I remember kind of leaving high school as a high school senior and really finally seeing somebody in our public discourse that represented me and represented a lot of the things that I cared about. Certainly looked like me in a lot of ways. And I remember organizing folks on our dorm floor. I remember going to door knocks and making phone banks, doing all those things. And when he ended up winning that night, really feeling a part of that victory, helping to turn the state of Virginia blue. And that was kind of the beginning of me really getting into electoral politics as an avenue to improve people's lives. Fast forward a couple of years, got an opportunity to work on a lot of campaigns, both issue campaigns as well as senatorial campaigns and other campaigns for Congress. And then decided in 2016 to run for the Democratic National Committee. And over the past 4 years, we've been able to accomplish a lot on the DNC. And I'll answer more of that stuff as we get closer to the town hall. But getting a question already. And so, yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself really quick. I wanted to congratulate all of you who are first-time delegates to your congressional district conventions and your state conventions. Thank you for stepping up and doing this work, especially at a time right now where it isn't really clear how we're all going to pull this off, right? Politics is difficult even when we aren't facing a global pandemic. But I've always been a firm believer that we're the ones who make up the party. We're the ones who make up our political discourse. And any time that you put in, whether it's running for delegate or showing up at these state conventions or casting your ballot for nominating any of our elected officials or door knocking or phone banking or whatever the case is, I've always believed that brick by brick and bit by bit, we're able to build this thing together. So what we did was we sent out a link yesterday for you all to have the opportunity to submit some questions. I'm going to pull some of those questions up, and answer some of the ones that were most asked. And we had a lot of questions come in. So let's pull this up. I see you all reminiscing about that night in 2008 when we won that election. That was a great night for sure. So this is what I'll do. I'll talk first about some of the more immediate next steps. I got a lot of questions about, what are the next steps as a delegate. I got a lot of questions about what the conventions are going to look like and those things. I'll talk a bit about the conventions and some of the next steps for delegates, and then I'll shift a little bit and talk about and answer some questions about the Democratic National Committee as well. So the first question we have a question in Hopkins. What is the action next step as a delegate and for Minnesota DFL conventions? So most of the delegates were made aware that they were delegates this past week. And the next steps now, you should have received today, actually, your congressional district ballot. Now, on that ballot, you're going to have the opportunity to endorse candidates for Congress. You're going to have an opportunity to vote for what we call presidential electors. And the electors are essentially those who actually cast the Electoral College vote for President of the United States. On that ballot, you should also see candidates who are running for national delegate. And so there's a difference here. So as a DNC member, I'm a DNC member. I've been on the Democratic National Committee for 4 years. As a DNC member from Minnesota, I have a 4-year term. I was elected in 2016 and up for re-election this year. National delegate is a little bit different. National delegate is where you showed up on precinct caucus night and showed up at some of your Senate district meetings and ran for delegate for a particular president. We have Joe Biden delegates, we have Bernie Sanders delegates, we have Elizabeth Warren delegates, and then we have people who ran for uncommitted as delegates. That's different than my race. That race, the people who are running for national delegate are running to represent Minnesota at the actual Democratic National Convention, which will be hosted hopefully in Milwaukee this year in August. That's not a 4-year term. That is running now to represent us at the convention, where you'll vote on party platform, you vote on different party rules, different things like that. What I'm running for is a 4-year term, another 4-year term. So what the Democratic National Committee is, it's essentially the governing body for our party. At the DNC, we meet a whole bunch of times a year, and a lot of the decisions that we make are around the presidential primary, right? How those look, how caucuses look. We made decisions about debates, right? How many debates there were going to be and what some of the debate rules were. Different select committees decide different select things. We pass resolutions that help govern our party. We help define what it means to be a Democrat, right? We help define what our party platform is. What are the things that we care about? How do we want to advance people's lives? How do we want to make sure that Democrats essentially win up and down the ballot? We also come together, though, to make sure that we're doing our jobs to represent Democrats across the country. As part of our charge, I sit on the resolutions committee, for example, and there are certain resolutions that get brought up in these committees that are particularly relevant to the needs of Minnesotans, for example, the needs of some people that have called my phone. And my job is to represent you all. My job is to make sure that at every step of the way, as we're making these decisions, I'm thinking about Minnesotans and I'm thinking about the Minnesota DFL. This is the Democratic National Committee in a lot of ways is also what you make of it. You can show up and you can put in work. I'm really proud of the Minnesota delegation that we've sent. We show up and we put in work. We're making sure that we're going to these committee meetings. We're making sure that we're, recruiting candidates to run for office. We're making sure that we're helping to raise money for the candidates and helping to raise money for the state parties. We're making sure that we represent our state well and we're representing the party well. And then at times, and oftentimes you really have to challenge the party too. One thing that I'm proud of coming from Minnesota is that a lot of the values that we come to, I would even argue that we take advantage, that we take for granted here, right? Whether it's our ease of voting or whether it's our tradition of good governance or what have you, we're able to scale that good work up and scale it out across the DNC. I'm really proud that in Minnesota we have in my opinion, a really grassroots organizing culture. And we've been able to bring that grassroots organizing culture in a lot of ways to the DNC. The DNC also, depending on the year, we vote for who should run the party as a DNC chair. Traditionally, if a Democratic president wins, they're more than likely going to decide who the DNC chair is going to be. Unfortunately, in 2016, we obviously did not win that election, and so the DNC chair's race was a race between a handful of candidates, and Tom Perez ended up winning that race and has been our DNC chair for the last 4 years. So, like I said, the DNC is something that you make of it. I'm really proud of the folks from our state, Ken Martin, March Hoffa, the chair and the vice chair of the Minnesota DFL, and the other DNC members who really take this work seriously, who really pick up the phone and call, I don't want to call you constituents, but call our partners in this work for insight and for advice, and again, to make sure that we're representing you at the DNC. I got a question, I got a lot of these questions as well. How many DNC elected members are there? That's a really good question. In Minnesota, we have 4 elected DNC members. We have 2 women DNC members and 2 male DNC members. And we make sure we have those separate so that we always have equal division or a balance representing our state. In addition to those 4 DNC members, we have the chair of the Minnesota DFL, Ken Martin, the vice chair of the Minnesota DFL, March Hoffa, are also DNC members. And across the country, state chairs and state vice chairs are all DNC members. So it's 6 of us. And then Commissioner Debbie Gotel from Hennepin County is actually she's the chair of the county officials, Democratic county officials. And so being the chair of that makes her a DNC member as well. So we have 7 DNC members coming from Minnesota. We have 447 DNC members total. And they're selected by a whole different range of ways. About half of the states elect their DNC members. Our state is one of them. We actually have an election. And about another half of the states, they actually appoint their DNC members. So it's either an executive committee appointment or it's a chair's appointment or something like that. I think there are pros and cons to every single, to each one of those approaches. I personally like the actual election a little bit better because it just forces us to actually talk to real people. It actually makes us really work to do this. This DNC isn't something where you wake up one morning and say, oh, I want to run for this, right? It's, you got to put in a little bit of work. You got to actually talk to some people. You have to actually get a healthy pulse of what Minnesota is looking for, get a healthy pulse of what the party needs, and also have the willingness to push the party when we need to. And so being an elected DNC member has influenced me in ways that I think have changed my position on different issues as well. And what I mean by that is if you know that when you're casting a ballot for something, or if you know that you are advocating for some sort of a policy or some sort of a rule change or what have you at the DNC, I'm not just thinking about the small committee of people that got me there, or the one person that appointed me there. I'm thinking about you all, right? There are going to be about 4,000 voting members at the state convention. And there were thousands of people that voted for them to be delegates at the state convention. And so when we're walking in those rooms, that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about all the people who we represent. We're not thinking about pleasing one person. We're thinking about making sure that we represent the entire state. Let me see here. So we got a question. This was also asked a lot. The differences between the DNC and the DCCC, or the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. So the DNC operates more as a body that, like I said, governs the actual party, governs the actual business of the party, helps set rules for state parties, helps raise money and support state parties and other initiatives. We partner with on-the-ground organizations, we partner with vendors, we do all these things to make sure that we're reaching people, we're turning out the vote, we're organizing, we're doing those things, we're getting polling, all that. The DCCC is similar to that, except there are no elected members to the DCCC. The DCCC is more of a campaign political arm, and it exists to make sure that if we have a majority in the Democratic in the House of Representatives, for example, a Democratic majority. The DCCC exists to make sure that we maintain that majority. Maintain that majority by supporting Democratic incumbents. We protect the majority, or we fight for the majority by recruiting candidates to run in swing districts, to run in some of the more swing districts. So that's what the DCCC actually exists for. So those are the differences. There aren't any voting members of the DCCC, but their primary charge is to recruit good candidates run for Congress to make sure that we keep the House or take the House if we don't have it, and protect those majorities. So someone asked, what would be on the ballot that we receive on May 14th? So a lot of you, all of you actually, if you're delegates to the state convention, should have received your ballot from your congressional district. And what will be on that ballot, depending on what district you're in, well, actually not depending on what district you're in, there'll be an opportunity to endorse a candidate for Congress or an incumbent for Congress. Again, you will vote for a presidential elector or the individual that cast the electoral college vote at the end of the general election. You will vote for national delegate at the congressional district. So for those of you who ran to be delegates to the state convention, some folks will want to run for the national delegate spots. So let's say, for example, you declared yourself as a Bernie Sanders delegate. At your congressional district, you'll be able to run as a Bernie Sanders candidate to represent Minnesota at the state convention or at the national convention as a Bernie Sanders delegate. So that'll be on the ballot. The DNC campaign, the DNC race, the one that I'm in, is not going to be on the congressional district ballot. That one will be on the state convention ballot that you'll get in about a week or two. Will there be ranked voting for the candidates on the ballot? So for the DNC race, there will not be ranked voting. This will be a simple plurality. So no matter what we do, we'll elect 2 women candidates and two male candidates, no matter how many people run. So let's say there's 12 people or so that run in the race and I'm running for. The top 2 vote getters will be the ones who are elected on the Democratic National Committee. So there's no ranked choice voting or anything like that for that process. Ooh, I like this one. This one's from Ortonville. Is there any advice you can offer those of us running to be national delegates to the convention? The advice I would give to you is the same advice that I give candidates that we've tried to recruit for years, candidates who've been elected now. I'd say a couple of things. I'd say, one, if you decide to run for national delegate, first, congratulations. It's actually going to be a bit of work to win that race. So what I would suggest is take it seriously. This is an opportunity to not only represent the party, but by extension, you're representing our state. You're representing the folks in our state. You're representing their hopes or their fears or their questions or their concerns. Take representation seriously. It means a lot to be entrusted with a level of responsibility when you're speaking for people. Another piece of advice I would give is while you're taking it seriously, make sure that people see your joy in this process too. There's a lot of stuff going on in this country and going on in this world that has certainly stripped a whole lot of people of their joy. But the opportunity to represent people and the opportunity to advance their cause and the opportunity to fight to make a difference should be a joyous process as well. I think oftentimes we, particularly those of us on the margins or those of us who seek to represent folks on the margins or be allies or what have you, we start from a place of scarcity almost. We start from a place of, here are all the problems that we need to fix. And I don't mean to say that we dismiss that, but I am saying that people want something to fight for too. People want something to believe in, not just believe against, right? To get more technical on this campaign for national delegate, again, have a good time with it. I see a lot of people running for national delegate who are creating logos, for example. Have fun and draft up a logo for yourself. Maybe make a Facebook page for yourself. Invite as many voting members of that congressional district as possible to like that page. And there's nothing like old-fashioned pick up the phone, one-to-one conversations. I think a lot of folks, particularly with this short window, we really rely on digital communication, and unfortunately that's what we have to over-rely on right now. But I would give you the advice, make sure you pick up the phone and call people. I can't tell you how often that I hop on the phone and just give someone a blind cold call just to check in, see how they're doing, ask them what they care about, how much that means to people. Because it feels like people aren't asked that question often enough. I think the fourth thing I would do is, while taking this seriously, put together a bit of a team. This is an opportunity to create another access point or avenue for people to participate in politics. I remember my first campaign for DNC. I didn't know what I was doing at all, but I was passionate about the time that we were in, and I really wanted to see adequate representation on the DNC. And what me and my team were able to do was find opportunities within that campaign for people to participate, even if they knew nothing about politics. The person who drafted my logo, for example, wasn't a political guy, and this was actually his first political campaign logo. But he was a very talented graphic designer, and I gave him an opportunity to apply his skill and apply his natural talent into politics, right? I had some other people who weren't very artistic or didn't feel that they were creative, and they just wanted to put in some time into something that they believed in. Well, we had them stuff some envelopes to help send, or we had them be our hospitality captains, for example, and make food for those who are making phone calls for us. So have some fun with this. Build a team. Think of this as an opportunity not just to become a national delegate, but to start to build the kind of army that we need to win these elections up and down the ballot in November. Oh, this is a tough one. And I don't have a direct answer for this, but I can share what I believe. What is the DNC strategy for gaining the support of moderate Republicans, independent voters, and folks who haven't voted or haven't voted in a while? That's a really good question. And I guess I can't speak for the DNC here because I don't know exactly what the plans are for outreach to moderate Republicans, moderates, independents, and recovering Republicans. But I wouldn't start there, actually. I think that we as a party, and my intention is to start with the base of folks that we've ignored for too long. It is my strong opinion that we lost the election in 2016 for a whole multitude of ways. One of the ways is that we didn't get our base to show up and vote. Whether that's black folks, brown folks, women, young folks, etc. That coalition, in my opinion, is what's going to advance this country and what's going to advance the party. I think we first start with shoring up our votes from our own bases, right? People talk all the time about black women are the backbone of the party, and they're our most reliable voters and all that stuff. Well, then the strategy should be then let's put some black women in some leadership. The strategy should be then let's promote more black women candidates, right? Like, we can't look at the base of support that we get and the turnout numbers that we get consistently and continue to ignore those communities. So I think the first way I would answer that question is, well, the strategy must start with our own base. The strategy must start with listening to the base that says, hey, here's where we stand on this certain policy. Hey, here's where we stand on climate change. Hey, here's how we stand on immigration, whatever it is. And then we as a party, our job is to then reflect that. And we make the conditions ripe, and we change the environment to ensure that those policies, those values, those positions, what have you, are advanced in our political discourse. Once we've done that work, then we can think about recruiting Republicans. Then we can think about the voters who sometimes vote for us and sometimes not vote for us, right? I think that those who are showing up voting for us all the time, let's continue to give them a reason to vote then, right? Let's not make them regret the fact that they voted for Democrats because they thought that they were voting for this and they ended up getting this. I'll also say there are certain candidates that do better in certain districts. And I think that in a lot of ways, while we're trying to advance the values of the party, we need to be mindful of who more accurately reflects districts as well. And there's polling that supports this position, right? If young people, and by young people I mean 36 and under, so I'm still young for a little bit. If young people 36 and under were to vote at the rates that baby boomers typically vote every single year, not only would Democrats win every single election, and this isn't a joke, elections wouldn't even come close. It wouldn't even come close, right? So we have the numbers, I think, already. We have the base of support already that exists, that while we're trying to add to the army of people to help to support us in the fall, we also need to turn out the people that are already here. That's my position. I'm speaking for Ron Harris, DNC, and that's it. And it doesn't mean that we don't talk to Republicans or talk to independents, right? That doesn't make any sense at all. But what it means is that we start from a place of getting the support that we normally get and turning out that support because we know that's almost enough. And then we go out and we use that base of support to then add to the broadening coalition. And it actually shouldn't be that hard. I I can't find somebody who can objectively say that what's been going on in the last 4 years in the White House is productive or representative or ethical. I mean, there's so much going on here, right? That I don't think that this election is ours to lose, right? Because we're battling against an incumbent. I am saying that I think that we have enough folks out here who are interested in a different vision for our country, and a vision that's more inclusive, a vision that actually meets the needs of people, a vision that actually thinks about people and has plans and strategies. I think more people are going to want something like that. I think it would be a huge mistake for us as a party, though, to I think we can compromise some positions on technicalities, but I don't think we should compromise values for the sake of earning more votes. I don't think a compromise on a value to get more votes is worth it at the end of the day. Because then we'll keep compromising our values to get more votes, and then once we win, we don't really stand for something, and then we lose all that support anyway. Or worse, we don't actually improve people's lives. I think you all get the point. Next question. Okay, I got this one a lot. And again, I'm not sure what the DNC can do, but I'm gonna speak for myself. How can you and the DNC show support and solidarity with Ahmaud Arbery and his family during this time with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has only bitterly underscored how Black and Indigenous communities are being left behind, and the need for massive policy reforms in many ways in our society? So I think that's three different questions. The 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 best way, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the best way, in my opinion, for us to honor Ahmaud Arbery and the literal countless Black men that have now become hashtags because their life was taken away unjustly. I think one of the best ways is to show up and vote, to be honest with you. I think these rules were, if humans created these problems, right? If humans, elected officials, et cetera, have advanced certain policies or haven't put policies in place that protect people's lives, we have a huge opportunity to get rid of folks who do that stuff. And I don't want to overly I don't want to overly simplify the issues here, right? Like, I don't believe that voting solves every single problem, but I think that voting gives us a huge tool and an opportunity to put in leadership that's going to represent us. But here's the thing. I think oftentimes for us in politics, we think that our only way to make a difference is via electoral politics. And while that might be our most comfortable opportunity, our most comfortable way of doing so, I think it's even better if we leverage our platforms to speak out against some of these things. We leverage our platforms to say, hey, you know what? Candidates, if you don't have a very clear policy on how you're going to protect Black lives, we're gonna have to be tough with our vote here. We're gonna have to make sure that you're not going to get our support, because far too many of us are getting killed and slain in the streets. I think the second part of that question, about the policy reforms needed in our society, and that COVID-19 has exacerbated some of the issues in our society. You're absolutely right. COVID-19 has shown us all the challenges that have already existed, and this has made it worse. It's no surprise, and we say this a lot in the Black community, right? That when America catches a cold, Black folks get pneumonia. So it's no surprise that those who are on the margins, those who have been disinvested in and are more vulnerable and susceptible to some of these things, are facing some of the worst outcomes, right? As a party, I think we have a really awesome opportunity to not only build a social safety net that ensures that when we are faced with challenges like this again, that nobody slips through the cracks, that people have fair wages, and people have workplace protections, and people have health care, and people have work from home policies, and people have money for child care. I'm gonna go down the list with those things, because what this has shown me is that whenever they told us, no, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that, oftentimes, like, yeah, that makes sense. This is expensive, what have you. But what this has shown me is that there's nothing in the way of us actually building the kind of social safety net that we need. There's nothing in the way of us of actually advancing good policies to improve people's lives. The only thing that's in the way is political will, right? And so a lot of us have known that for a while, but this has made it so clear. And so this is the time for us as Democrats, and progressives, right, to start to lay the groundwork for the kind of future that we all want. I think people are starting to see the additional unemployment insurance, for example, every single week, or the relief check, or the advanced protections for paid sick time, or work from home policies, or whatever. They're seeing them now, and I think that they're liking them. And I think that we should, let's put it this way, there's no better time than a global pandemic to actually put in policies that improve people's lives. We've seen over the last month that we'll spend 1 trillion, 2 trillion, right, on a whim, right? So let's make sure that after this time, we retain a lot of that social safety net. Like, we retain those policies, we retain those protections for people. It would be a crying shame if we introduce all these things, and then once we get even a semblance of things getting a little bit better, we take those things away from folks. No, let's make them permanent, because we know that they're good for people. And if they're good for people, they're good for the country. All right. I got a question about voting. They asked, what can we do in terms of our voting policy to make it easier for people to vote in November? A lot of things that we can do. Voting is one of my things here. Even if we weren't in a global pandemic, we should be doing every single possible thing to ensure that it is easy as possible for people to go out and vote. One of the things that I'm a big proponent of, and that I'm talking about on my campaign a lot, is automatic voter registration when somebody turns 18. I don't think that when you turn 18, that you got to go get a new license and now I have to go register to vote and do all those things. Why don't we just get rid of that? Why don't we just, as soon as you turn 18, you're registered to vote, and it's an opt-out system as opposed to an opt-in system. How powerful would it be for all these high school seniors who've gotten the end of their senior year taken away? They likely have the fall to their college looks a lot different than what they thought it would look. What if they were all empowered to vote and they took out all their anger on the current administration in November, right? I mean, that's such a huge opportunity for us to make it easy for people to vote. In addition to that, even before the pandemic, people were waiting in line for 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours to vote. And in a nation like ours, where one of our pillars of democracy is voting, one of the ways that we actually make our voices heard is through voting. One of the ways that we actually have a hand in shaping who elects us is through voting. That should be the easiest thing in the world. And so I'm also a proponent of absentee voting, or mail-in ballots. I don't think that we need to go to a completely mail-in ballot system where we get rid of polling in person. I actually personally enjoy polling in person. There's something about showing up and getting my sticker and talking to the election judges and all those folks when we get there to go vote. But we should all have the option, particularly right now, to mail in our ballot. And it's easy. We've actually done it in Minnesota. We've been doing it in Minnesota for 30 years or so. You can request a ballot online. Actually, yesterday was the first day you can request a ballot online. So make sure you go to mnvotes.org, minnesotavotes.org, to get that information. Request a ballot. And we're one of the states that are no excuse absentee. So we don't have to provide an excuse for wanting a ballot. We can just put in a ballot. You request a ballot. If you are registered to vote, they'll send you a ballot. If you're not, they'll send you a voter registration form and a ballot, so that we can send those things back, and you're going to be able to vote from your couch. We know that in 2016, for example, there were 3 cities in particular. There were a lot of cities, but 3 in particular that saw a much lower voter turnout. They were Detroit, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. And we lost Michigan by a slim margin. We lost Pennsylvania by a slim margin. We lost Wisconsin by a slim margin. If we have the number of turnout in those cities that we're typically used to, we've won the election. That's it, right? So part of our path to power, I think, is by making it easier for people to vote. And taking away the partisanship away from it for a second, that's just the right thing to do. That's just the right thing to do. Is to make sure that our citizens can cast a ballot for their elected officials, or for their policies, or for their referendums, or whatever, as easy as possible. All right, let me go to my question page here. One second. Oh, someone just sent me a note. As it relates to automatic voter registration when someone turns 18, another thing that we can do that I think is a more progressive policy is just get rid of voter registration whatsoever. There are a lot of there's when you really actually sit and think about it, what is actually the point of voter registration? So that's something that with more information we can definitely support, right? How do we just get rid of it if it's just exists as a barrier? Someone asked, who has a better hockey team, Team UMD or the Gophers? I'm a proud Bulldog. I went to the University of Minnesota Duluth and finished in 2013. That's an easy question. I'm a proud Bulldog. Love the U, but a proud Bulldog. Someone's asking about the national convention in Wisconsin. So here's where we're at with that. I'm not sure if you all know, but we actually had planned the Democratic National Convention to occur in July. And because of the pandemic, the convention committee, the team that's actually tasked with putting on the convention in Wisconsin, has been working with the local officials and working with the state officials. And they ended up moving the convention to August. So August is when we plan on having our convention, the third week of August. From everything that I know right now, while we're moving forward and doing the best that we can to provide a safe in-person convention, a safe in-person event, the Rules and Bylaws Committee of the DNC voted this week, yesterday or the day before, I'm not sure, to allow for contingency planning. So, as part of our rules at the DNC, we weren't allowed to do virtual conventions or nominate that way. And what the Rules and Bylaws Committee did this week was positioned us to be able to start to plan that way just in case. So we're gonna have a convention. We are still trying to figure out what that's gonna look like. I'm happy to continue to ask questions and figure out that information. Um, it's my hope that we'll be safe enough to have it in August. The way things look, I think it's wise for us to plan a contingency for doing it online or some other virtual means, and or having a much smaller in-person convention. Okay, so let's talk about the state convention for a little bit, where we actually get elected. So at the so where you're actually able to cast a ballot for this DNC race is going to be at the state convention, the virtual state convention. You should be receiving ballots for voting. I want to say May 26th, and I'll get my team to communicate that better and to make sure that you have the right information. But it's going to be a about a week's window to vote for this, and that happens in just a couple of weeks. What's going to be at the state convention are going to be we have some candidates that we need to endorse, and we have the national delegates who are running. The people that are running for national delegates are the ones that who want to go to the national convention. We'll be voting for them, and then we'll be voting for the DNC members. And so, like I said earlier, the DNC race is going to look a little bit different than what you've all been casting the nomination votes for. As you remember, when you were nominating your candidates for Senate and for House, it was a ranked choice ballot. And so there are multiple rounds of voting. This won't be that. There'll be a ballot, and it'll show female candidates and it'll show male candidates. And you'll have the opportunity to pick two female and two male, no matter how many people are in the race. I know that there are more than two men in my race. And so you'll be able to pick two of us for that. They're going to give us an opportunity to record a 2-minute video that you'll be able to watch and take notes and learn a bit more about us. I plan on doing at least one more of these before we start balloting, and some other opportunities. Definitely doing some phone banks. Definitely want to hop on the phone and talk to you all. And so if you want a phone call, make sure you shoot me a message on here too. I'll make sure we give you a call and we can talk about whatever your issue is. try to find some more questions here. Someone in St. Paul asked, if the state convention is held remotely, how will the balloting regarding resolutions be handled? So, from my understanding, the resolutions committee will create a list of resolutions based on what the organizing units have passed up to the state convention. So, people showed up with resolutions, for example, at their precinct caucuses, and they all rose up to different levels. As a delegate, you'll be able to vote yes or no on each item of that list. So should get one full sheet of all the resolutions, and you can decide yes or no based on what your preferences are. And then the resolutions that get a certain threshold are then adopted and passed by the state convention. Okay. All right. Those were the majority of the questions that were asked more than once. Let me slide through the comments here and see if I can pick up a couple. We got a couple minutes until we're off here. How can we help people who are scared to vote? Some people I talk to say they don't vote for a lot of reasons, even when voting is best for all of us because we see changes. What I've found when I talk to voters is I share first why the heck I'm a voter, right? I share why it's worth my while and why it's worth my time and why it's worth whatever effort that I put in to make sure that I get my vote out. I don't talk about big things like, oh, it's our civic duty and oh, it's our right to democracy. And if we don't use the right, we could lose it one day. Because I think that goes over people's heads or they don't care. I think when I talk about my personal story, when I talk about some of the things that I've faced and how politics has been a pathway to improve my own life and other people's lives, when I talk about the people that inspired me, when I talk about President Obama, for example, is the person that really got me interested in electoral politics, or when I talk about my mom and my sisters and how I do this work with them in mind, when I talk about things like that, that I've found reaches people a little bit differently. Oftentimes, as Democrats, I think we start with the head and we end at the heart. And I think that we need to start with the heart first, right? Talk to people about why this matters to you, and that'll just shine through a little bit better as well. Let's see here. Got a comment that said make voting day a national holiday. Agreed. All right. Well, I think that's it. I'll say this in closing. Thanks everyone for taking the time today. This is my first Facebook Live video. I'm actually far more comfortable standing in front of a room of 500 people than I am in my living room by myself talking to the screen. But I appreciate you taking the time nonetheless. We're going to have more opportunities like this, not only before the election, before the state convention where this election is actually going to be held, but we're going to have these, if I'm elected again, have them throughout the year. I think these are great opportunities for us to share information with each other, help communicate, and share what's going on at the DNC, what you can do to be a part of it, things that we need to be thinking about as DNC members, and ways that we can better represent you. Please, please, please like the Facebook page, send me some comments, ask me some questions. I'm here to talk to you. I'm here to share a little bit more about my vision and share a little bit more about the things that we need to do together. Keep a heads up for more emails over the next couple of weeks. Your inbox is going to be flooded because there are a lot of people running for this thing. And ask for your support. Over the last 4 years, we've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of work together, whether it's fighting at the DNC so that we could have a climate change debate. We lost that fight, but I think it was a worthy fight. To changing a lot of our rules and making it easier for people to participate in our primary and our caucus process. Making it easier for people who are non-binary, for example, to participate in some of our processes. Making sure that we heard loud and clear from people they wanted a dramatically reduced role for superdelegates. We got that work done together. I was elected a couple of years ago as the chairman of the Midwestern Caucus, and while it's been a lot of work, we've got a lot of things done there too. So stay tuned. We're gonna have more opportunities to talk and engage with each other. I hope I earn your support. Keep an eye out again for those ballots. A lot of you all should have received your congressional district ballots yesterday. If not, reach out, ask questions. We're here to help you out. And as we get closer to the state convention, to where you all start to receive ballots for that, we'll be calling, checking in, and hoping to earn your support. So like the Facebook page, go to my website, ronharrisdnc.com, send your comments, send your questions. If you got a little bit of money to spare, please send that too. We're trying our best to reach every delegate in the state. And because we've upgraded alternates to be delegates, that's about 4,000 people to talk to in the next 10 days or so. And so I would love your help in helping me do that. If you're interested in endorsing the campaign, let me know. We're always looking for regular folks to endorse. You don't need a title, or you don't need to be some representative or some delegate or whatever. If you're just a friend or somebody who enjoyed having this conversation, or somebody who believes in the work that we're doing, we love that support as well. Seriously, to the essential workers, thank you so much for what you're doing at this time. Our nurses, our doctors, our postal workers, our truckers, our farmers, our butchers, our daycare providers, our teachers, all of you all, and I say this time and time and time again, and I'm not going to stop saying it, you all are the ones who keep this country afloat. You are the ones that keep this country moving. You are the ones who should get far more recognition and far more protections than you're getting right now. And so for all of us who are the beneficiaries of all that work, let's make sure we come together and we build a party, we build a country that's worthy of the sacrifice and the time that they're putting in for us. Let's make sure that we never again take for granted somebody, people who are maintaining buildings or maintaining roads, people who are making food or keeping the grocery store stocked or keeping rooms clean or what have you. Make sure that we never, ever again take them for granted, because without them, we'd be in a whole mess of trouble right now, right? And unfortunately, it's taken a pandemic for a lot of folks to wake up and realize that these workers' lives, they do matter, that their work matters. And even if they didn't do work, them just being human beings matters as well. So let's make sure we don't forget that, because I'm definitely not going to forget it myself. Thank you all so much. I've taken enough of your time. You enjoy the rest of your evening. Hug your family members safe. The last thing I'll say is, most of you know we shifted from Stay Home Minnesota to Stay Safe Minnesota. So please remember to stay safe, maintain social distancing, don't be a jerk, and make sure you wear your mask in public when you're around a whole bunch of people, right? Let's not just do it for ourselves, let's do it for our neighbors. And with that, we're signing off. Thanks so much, everybody.